Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to have this conversation today. So, the way this went down is I was having a really emotional memoir inspired moment. And I believe so strongly in community for these reasons because I was like, I need someone who can tell me if this is normal or not. And I sent you a message on Instagram. So I'm going to start by reading that and then we'll jump into the
Absolutely.
conversation.
Play through the whole thing. Let's do it.
Okay. So I said, okay, so be real with me. Did you find your memoir emotionally impacting you all the way through the writing and editing process? I just did a big stint of edits this week on mine, and I'm feeling all caps emotional and thinking it might be related to the work I've been doing on my memoir. To be honest, at every stage of drafting or editing so far, I've had different portions or aspects of my memoir hit me. Sometimes it's just the overwhelming realization of everything I went through and survived. Thoughts, advice, and then we jumped into a whole string of conversation where you gave such beautiful wisdom that I, at some point, said, we need to hop on a recording this weekend and capture this conversation because I know if I'm feeling this and you then validated that for me, that you experienced this, then this is something we need to talk about more publicly so people who write memoir are aware that this is a very normal part of the process, both in memoir writing and maybe just trauma and grief and stuff in general.
Absolutely. And in light of like all the stuff that's going down this week too about having author friends and author community from like the things that are happening on threads, which is like not knowing. Like being an author is like a singular experience. It can feel really isolating when you're writing. It can feel really isolating when you put like to me it felt like I was birthing another baby. This is like so overwhelming at times, but like I want to do this. I know I'm going to do this. That it like that community aspect is really underrated. So I love that we're here. I love that we're talking about it. It feels very timely. I believe the first thing I responded back to you was, this is going to be good when you just out the gate, you're like, be so real with me.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So yeah, that's real. It happened. So, how do we want to jump into this?
What
So,
was your
I mean, I could talk
experience with
about,
it? Like,
yeah, I'm okay. I'm going to start there. So, first of all, I did my major edits while I was pregnant
mhm.
because I published my book like just like a couple of weeks before I had my third baby. So, like, I was already feeling all the things, and then I sent my manuscript off to my editor after I had already done 2 rounds of
Oh,
edits.
sure. Yeah.
And in those rounds of edits where I like kind of was going through things and like, make the way I write is I pull from my notebooks, I transcribe my notebooks, and then I kind of condense that into like a story. So like if it feels like you're reading my journal, it's because you are
Yeah.
reading my journal. Um and so like that in and of itself is a very vulnerable thing, just like to start from there. And so every time I was going through, I was like, okay, what exactly am I going to share? And going to share with the reader. And in my mind, like I already know all the things that have happened. So I'm like, oh, like of course this would make sense, or oh, this is like really relevant to me, but maybe not necessarily to the reader or to the story. So, I'm making cuts, which is already hard enough for me. And, I'm feeling all the feelings. And then I send it off to my editor. And I just kind of like took a break.
Mhm.
It's like not gonna think about this for a hot minute because it's in someone else's hands right now. And I love my editor. I feel like having an editor that's someone that like you have a relationship with, that like you trust, is so crucial in this process, especially if you're writing something as vulnerable as memoir, right? This really happened to you. This is the story of, or a story of your life, right? Maybe not the whole story of your life, like a biography, but a portion of your life. And it's going to be impactful because why else would you be writing this, right? Something has happened and you want to share that story with the world. Like that's big. It's already big. So I get the edits back from my editor. And And I'm like overwhelmed. Like, she did not hold back, which is great. I didn't want her to hold back, but I'm like, okay. And I mean, we've talked about this before when I've been on. I am not a trained writer. This is not what I thought that I was going to do with my life. This is like the side hustle of all side hustles
I
in
love that.
terms of
We need to make
like,
shirts with
and
that. Memoir writing, the side
but
hustle
like
of all side hustles.
but like backed with that like spiritual like push of like this is like you're meant to write this story. Like, you can't keep it inside of you, right? Like, that was my experience. Like, I have to do this. Like, my body and soul will not be at rest until I get this out there. And then after that, there's a whole nother can of worms where it's like, oh, now I have to convince people to read this too. It's not enough just to put it out there, but like now you need people to like, you gotta like be in community with these people, like share the story. So that's another topic for another show. You'll get there and you'll be like, you'll be in my DMs and you'll be like, oh my God, we gotta talk about this. I'll be like, yeah, we do gotta talk about this. So I get it back. I'm going through it all. I'm like focusing on each note as it comes. Like, how can I just resolve this comment? And I kind of take like a blinders on approach. Like, okay, I'm just like, let's answer each thing. And at that point, like, the editing sort of became like collaborative. Like, she would come in and she would like check on my comment and she would like, give me the feedback. And we got through that stage and it was a little bit less intense for me emotionally because I was focusing on one thing at a time. And every once in a while, something would come up and it would be like super triggering. Or she would ask me like a really blunt question, like, is this something you want to put out there? Is this thing the thing, right? That kind of a thing. And then, so, I mean, there was a like more self-reflection. Every stage you're going through this is more and more self-reflection. So it makes complete sense when you step back and look at it from like an aerial bird's eye view of like, well, yeah, okay. Self-reflection. Yeah, you're gonna get emotional. Like, it's gonna trigger you. Things are gonna hit a little bit differently. But the thing that really got me was I moved through all that. And I think I was at the stage that you are nearly at now, which is to say, I had done my rounds of editing. She had done her rounds of editing. I actually handed off my manuscript at that point to my husband, who did another second round of editing. And I specifically asked him to make sure that every storyline that opened up, right, because there happened to be a bunch of foreshadowing, Easter eggs, whatever you want to call it. The technical term is foreshadowing, but I just love that in this day and age, we call it an Easter egg. There's a ton of foreshadowing. So I was like, I really want to make sure, because in real life, all of these things were resolved. And that was part of the magic of my story. I really want to make sure that everything gets tied up and that you, someone who wasn't present for all of the story, can like be like my quality control. And he went above and beyond. Not only did he do that, he had this massive note document on his phone where like every time something would open up, he would put it in, and then he would come back in and like check off that like it got resolved. And he would come back and tell me, be like, I don't think this got resolved in the way that you wanted to, like maybe come back to this page. So like he's like sharing this with me and I'm like, okay. And I'm like in talks with my editor, like, hey, did you feel that way too? Like, we're like wrapping everything up. And he's an Oxford comma guy. So like, and I mean, again, I'm not a trained writer. So like, I'm just like getting the words on the page. We'll, make it grammatically correct later. We'll like make it, professional and presentable. Yeah, that was his job. And so, we're still together, which says a lot that I could like take that. So we get through all of that. My editor takes another crack at it, she has just a handful of notes. And she says, okay, I think you ought to read it through from start to finish one more time before we like say, yeah, this is good. And then and then after that I handed it off to my husband, and he formatted it. And so the formatting of this book is actually top notch, and we used vellum, and it was great. So can't sing those praises enough. So I read through this. I'm at home by myself, 8.5 months pregnant, and I sit down on my couch and I'm like, I'm committing to the cause. I'm going to read this start to finish. And I kid you not, I'm crying. I'm laughing. I am like, I am like, I keep thinking like, oh, I need to get up and go to the bathroom because I'm pregnant. Oh, I need to get up and film my wedding. I can't. I'm like captivated by what's on this page. And I'm very aware of what's happening in the side of my brain where I'm like, you know what's going to happen. Not
Oh.
only did you live this, but you wrote it and you've been rereading it for months and weeks and days and like eating and sleeping and breathing this. And I just, the energy of what was on the page, and so I was thinking about this before we were going to stop on this call. I was like, what am I going to tell her? We actually stop being the producer and we start being the consumer.
Mhm.
And so I was like consuming my own art. And I was like, okay, if I'm having this much of a reaction in consuming the art that I created, there's something here. So I feel like that's really validating if you're in this place and you switch your hats, right? And you put on, I'm going to consume this and I'm going to, see how this makes me feel. And you have that reaction. If that's the reaction that you were going for, and it was, I didn't realize that my book was going to be quote unquote captivating. That is the word that has come back for me for feedback from the people who have read it and like reached out and let me know. Hands down, multiple people using the same word, captivating. I can't put this down. It's such a quick read. It's so easy to read. I love the formatting. I love how, you broke this down. I like the style of how you wrote it. Just like keeps me engaged. Like like every time I finish a chapter, I can't wait to start the next chapter. That singular feedback was like, yeah, okay, I felt that
Mhm.
when I read it through, and it was ready for editing. And I was like telling myself like, oh, I'm doing like a final punctuation check. Like, did we get, because my book is like, it's like 100,000 words. Like that's a lot.
Mhm.
Like that's long for, commercial standards today. I think most novels are somewhere in the realm of 60,000 to 90,000. My first draft was 130,000. So like I did edit like quite a bit. But still, like I was like, I can't take anything else out. Like you need, and I'm just a wordy
Well, and
girl
that's the perk of
anyway.
self-publishing is we can make it as long as we want, as long as it's a fast
I
read.
can do one as long as people like it and if want to read it, it's fine. But yeah, so I'm kind of like on the edge of my seat now, waiting for you to get to that point and waiting to see how you will describe your experience of being a consumer of your final product so that then when you get your feedback, you can be like, oh, does that match up? What does my experience of my own art
Yeah.
match up with other people's experience
Mhm.
of my own art? And art is deeply subjective. So, you know, in the discourse of this week or whatever, we as the artist then, put this out there for consumption by the public and they get to have their own subjective opinions about it. And I'm not coming for that in any way, shape, or form. What I'm saying is it's really interesting to take off your producer hat and put on your consumer hat and then see if your experience of your own artwork sort of falls in line with other people's experiences of your artwork, and was that what you were going for?
Yeah.
Like did you hit your mark, right?
Mhm.
Because I think, at least for me, I felt so compelled to put this out into the world, right? I couldn't not do it. I tried not to.
Right.
I had this beautiful story of my spirit guide screaming at me one night while I was dreaming, like, get it together, start doing it. You're not doing it. She used so much stronger language, and I woke up like in a cold sweat, like I had been scolded by my grandma for like doing something naughty, like you're not doing the things you should be doing. I couldn't let it go. So I didn't really have an understanding when I started the process of what I wanted people to feel, like why I wanted to put this story. I just knew it was important for me to put this story out into the world. And now I have a much better idea of that. I was meant to be a connector of people. I was meant to build a community because getting divorced, being a co-parent, being a single person, dating again, figuring out how to put your life on the track that you want it to be on and how to live that fulfilling life and like how to dream again. Turns out that's
Universal.
like a pretty big
Yeah.
deal for
Yeah.
people. And so a lot of times when I felt alone going through all that, yeah, a lot of people also feel alone while they're going through all that.
Mhm.
So I didn't necessarily set out to write a captivating book. I set out to write something that was connecting to people, and it just happened to be a really captivating story. I couldn't really put that into words. I couldn't really verbalize that to you at the beginning, but now I can understand that it's happened. Okay, yeah, that was actually what I was going for. I just didn't really quite understand it. So,
For sure.
you could use that as a checkpoint as well. Like what you could actually sit and think about that at the beginning or before you press publish. Like, what is it that I want my audience to leave with feeling, or I want them to know? Presumably people are already doing that. I didn't do that.
I relate so much to like your experience with your memoir. While yet I'm not yet at that place where I'm getting ready to hit publish, I'm still a few editing steps ahead of that. I also did a full manuscript read before I gave this version of the memoir to my editor and had some of those same experiences that you described when you were sitting there on the couch. I mean, I consumed it as if it wasn't my own words. Like I was just riveted, even though I some level knew what was going to come next. I couldn't stop like just turning the page and riding that roller coaster of emotion. And so that it was really beautiful where when I got to start to share a full version of the manuscript with a few choice people, I shared that early version that I also gave to my editor with my mom, and she mirrored back to me the same impact that it had had on her, that even though she was aware of most of the plot points that were going on, she
Yeah.
also described how I think she read it in 1 or 2 sittings and stayed up till I think she messaged me at 4 in the morning to say that she had just put it down. So it had that same impact on her. Now, my editor, of course, took a little bit more like scheduled approach to her editing, but it's been amazing going through these developmental edits and seeing her comments where she's riding that roller coaster. It's a beautiful checkpoint for me as the writer to know that, like, oh, here she's feeling hopeful for me, aka the character. Here she's feeling discouraged. Here she's really frustrated at this other character. That's great. Like, that's where I want my reader to be. And so, 75% of her feedback was these beautiful little snippets of where she was emotionally in the story that served as a great checkpoint for me as the writer to know that I'm taking this reader on this journey. You don't ever get that kind of feedback at the end of someone's reading process. You get like an overview. So it was so
Right.
valuable. But I also found that it's a little bit different than like when I read the full manuscript and why I didn't think I was going to have an impact doing the edits, because I was going through and just doing the quick edits, like not any kind of big things I have to sit and wrestle with, not things I want to sit and move stories and shift in any major way, but the simple like add some clarifying about where we are right here or the time frame, or I think this word choice might be a little bit better or clearer, or what do you mean by this phrase? Like I just doing the quick stuff. So I wasn't even reading my whole memoir this time. I was just reading the highlighted portions that had the comment or maybe a little bit before or after for context to remember where I was in the story. And I think for me, as I've sat with this feeling for a couple of days, I messaged you the next day that I had to watch P.S. I Love You the next morning just to have a platform to like release my tears. I think that in revisiting this whole saga of like a 3 or 4 year time period that was really difficult in my life, that it was just another layer of grief for me, because so often when we're in the moment, there is not time to grieve and process. I mean, we're trying to rebuild our lives, suddenly we're divorced and we're co-parenting and we're trying to get jobs. And, I was doing all this other stuff that I really had to just keep my head down and keep moving through that. Yes, there was some level of grieving at the time, and I certainly talk about that in the book, but I think there's another level of grief that I am experiencing now, writing this story and starting to, switch my viewpoint as I start to reflect on and think about what the reader might take away from it and what their perspective might be, it's hitting me differently. And I just really wanted to have this conversation because, as you've experienced and as I've experienced, and what I am starting to think is a little bit more of a universality to the memoir writing process, our words are going to continue to hit us in different ways. And so, even though I was oblivious to the fact that I was going to be emotional post this round of editing, like, I think it's a important thing to put out there and give people a heads up so they can give themselves some self-care, some grace around those moments when it moves us. And that's beautiful, like you
Oh, yeah.
highlighted. That's the whole point.
I think I'm seeing this like really beautiful analogy. So like if you're at the beach and you're looking at the ocean during a storm and those waves come really fast and hard and they're really powerful, the ocean, the waves still come even when it's like a really calm day. Like we're never not processing what's happening around us. Like the world and nature and everything around us is still moving, however slowly, however quickly, no matter what's going on with us inside or outside. So it's never not going to be happening, right? We're never not going to have some sort of response. And that's the thing about great stories, like great storytelling or reading a really good book, is that each time you experience it, it has the ability to hit you just a little bit differently and change you in just a little way, or remind you of something that you thought that you had forgotten or you thought you had made it through. And that's like the lasting, enduring quality of this part of our humanity, of like sharing our stories and like not feeling alone, is that it's it's impactful no matter what, right? And so I think just highlighting that we are people, even when we are writers, even when we are the experiencers of this story and we are writing and telling something that is true and something that has happened, we are still human. And even when we go back and we reread our own words or we listen to our own story, it still has the ability to impact us. And sometimes it is grief. Sometimes it is grief. And I will tell you, I was going to do a book reading about a year ago. And so I went back through my author copy and was like highlighting some passages that I thought might be really good for me to speak of when I was doing this reading and doing this book signing. And I felt really proud of myself. I was like, look at where you are now and look at where you were then. Because you guys have been talking a lot in your podcast right now about the structures, the different structures that you can use to write memoir and the different ways, practically speaking, that we can spell this story out. We can do it chronologically. We can do it with short stories. We have a lot of options. But that doesn't mean that, because I think you're like the short story route, but mine is chronological.
Mine is
So what
chronological.
I'm trying, okay, but I'm not in any kind of like short story form. Like it's just straight up like you were reading my journal.
Yep.
So I was looking at passages from like 5 years before and was like, look at how much can change in the 5 years from where you were there and where you are now. And like, would you have ever guessed that you would have experienced all of this, written a book, published it, and now be in a place where you're going to share that with other people on a stage with your own words, live in real time? Like, I never would have guessed that. It was kind of like a latent dream, but I never would have thought that that would have been possible. So I guess what I'm saying here is, yes, you can feel grief when you go back and reread this. You can feel sadness, you can feel anger, you can feel frustration, but also there's this whole plethora of maybe more happier emotions.
Yeah,
You can feel proud,
emboldened,
you can feel
proud,
hope, you
all
can
of that.
feel, yeah. So the feelings aren't exclusively like, oh, but there are also some like hope core things that can come out of this. So yeah, these lasting stories, these stories that are, you know, so good that we feel like we must share them, we must tell them, because that's really what it takes to be a writer of memoir. You have had an experience that you feel so deeply that you must share it. Those stories are the ones that do exactly this. They elicit some sort of response from us in the future, on a second read, on a third read, even if it's us who has lived it, even if it's us who has experienced it. Grief is one of those tricky ones where, yeah, you certainly can be grieving. You can be grieving and hopeful at the same time. Like, you can have a lot of two things can be true here at once. But I think that's exactly why we're doing what we're doing. That's why we're bravely stepping into this particular genre of storytelling, because it's so important, because it's so emotional, because it's so unifying, because it's so community driven, right? We're wanting to make connections with people. We're wanting to, at least I wanted to make people feel less alone when they're going through such a big, impactful change in their lives.
Right.
And I
And
think you do too.
there's that healing aspect too. Like, I don't want anyone to listen to this conversation and misconstrue what I'm saying as like I'm still very triggered by anything that I've written about, because that's not the case. Like, the process of writing and putting it into a narrative and processing a lot of these stories means that I actually don't get triggered at all by the things that would be labeled as traumatic. It's more so what you're bringing up, where it's like I feel just such deep, I don't know, grief, sadness, whatever, for that woman that had to go through all of that, and I'm so proud of her for making it to the other side, and I feel all
And
of that when I
also,
when I
that
read.
woman is me.
Right.
I am that woman who did that. And then it's like, oh,
Yes.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so
Yes.
proud of what you did. And, then I hope that someone else who reads this, if they've gone through that, that they feel proud of themselves. Or if they're going through it, that they feel like, oh, there's hope at the end of this journey of whatever path that I'm on right now, that I too can feel, hopeful or proud or any of the other things after I got through what I'm going through. Um, but one thing I wanted to touch on, because you talked about the healing aspect of it, and I definitely think that, people who write memoir are healers, right? Like, we are taking our experiences and shaping them in a way that other people can digest them and consume them for their own healing, right? Like, we have healed, we are healing others. We're never done healing, we're always healing. But healing in and of itself is actually really well described. I can't remember who described this, so hat tip to whoever it is, but as a spiral staircase. So, like, even if you're in the same spot, you're never in the same spots. Like, you're ascending as you're healing. Um, and so I think that's kind of a perfect metaphor for what you're talking about. You started at the bottom when you were going through whatever it was that you were going through that you were writing about now. And as you're writing, you're moving upward in this spiral. So every time you come up against that trigger that was on that side, you're responding to it in a slightly different way because you have elevated yourself through these levels of healing. So, like, of course it's going to come up when you read about it or when you think about it again, but in a different way and with a different response. And that's something to really be proud of. If you are responding to something differently today than you did yesterday or last week or a year ago, that's something to be proud of, because that is healing. And I just think that that's a really beautiful thing to be able to share with people. And if you leave with nothing else today, it's that, when you read back your own work, if you're having this reaction like we have, if this truly is a universal experience, that you can recognize that little twinge of, but it doesn't get me quite as hard as it did before. That means that you are ascending that healing staircase. And that's something to be really proud of, because that's work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Julie, for joining me for this conversation today. I hope people will leave some comments if this is something that resonated with them as well. And I'm just
Yes,
so appreciative to
absolutely.
you for being a part of my writing community because I have found how essential it is to surround myself with fellow writers, those who are further on the publication road than me, and also those who are coming along behind me. I think it's just so important to immerse ourselves in that. So thank you for
And
that.
I'm both of those things at once because not only have I done one, but I'm working on two. And now I know all of before I just did whatever because I didn't know. And now I'm like, oh shoot, there is actually
We live and learn. We live and
maybe I
learn.
should maybe I should pay attention to that, right? So yeah, I thank you so much for being a part of my writing community and allowing me to be present in this space, which I do not take lightly, and I'm very grateful to share here with other people who are listening and on this journey. This is like not for the faint of heart. Like if you are going to do this, like you're my people because
Right.
I it's a lot.
It's a
It's a
lot.
lot, but
It's a
I'm
lot. And we're here
super
to
proud of you.
support and we're here
That's right.
to normalize some of these, aspects of the
Absolutely.
process. And yeah, happy writing, everyone.
So yes, let us normalize for you that when you read back your own work, it's totally appropriate to be moved by your story that in which you know exactly what happens
Absolutely.
because it's real.
It's real. Thank God for that.
It's real. That's right. We lived it. We moved through it. We're in better places now. Now we get to tell the story. I love that.
Love it.
Love
All
that.
right. Thank you.
Feels like a little piece of magic. Thank you so
All
much.
right.